It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, dig into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Andrew Klavan, and we're going to be discussing his new book, The House of Love and Death, book number 3 in the Cameron Winter Mystery Series. Andrew, it's always a joy to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to see you again, Shaun.
Well, I think the place I'd love to start is get a little insight. I've heard you say over and over again on your show that book number 3 is the best in the series. Books 1 and 2 were fantastic for you. Why is this one even better than the previous book?
I don't know. I think some of the themes just all came together in this sort of flow. It's gotten a great review in Publishers Weekly, which is the pre-pub review, and Amazon picked it as an editor's choice. And I think that it's just somehow everything gelled. When you do a first book, it's a little bit like a pilot. You're getting into on TV, you're sort of getting into the character, you're creating the character, putting him in the situation. The second book is famously the hard one. It's always very difficult. I was really, really pleased with the second one because it was the second one. But it's usually that third book where you find out whether this is going to work or not. And I just feel it really did. So I'm really happy with it.
Well, indeed, it really comes together. You have enough information on the core characters you're meeting throughout the series where all of a sudden they just come into, I feel like, full color in a way they hadn't in the previous books in the series. For the person who they've not yet encountered this series, give us a little insight. Who is Cameron Winter? I'm fascinating by some of the, I am fascinating. I try to be fascinated by some of the threads that really come from your own story. Like we did an interview on your book, The Great Good Thing, a year or so back. And, there's this whole thread of this ongoing relationship with Margaret, this counselor. And I know working with a counselor and a psychiatrist is important to your story. There's this thread about just being distant from his parents. That's a thread also in your story to some degree. And so I guess introduce us to this character and tell us a little bit about, are there ways that you've written yourself into this core character?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, he does grow out of the way I became a mystery writer, which is basically, I turned to tough guy mysteries and other kind of tough guy movies and things because I was looking for models of manhood in a world that was not really set up for that at that time and in my personal life. And really the one that I hit upon that just totally captured and colonized my imagination was Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe. And the moment that happened was in the opening of his first novel, The Big Sleep. Marlowe, the private eye, classic tough guy private eye, is approaching his client's mansion and he sees a stained glass window with a picture of a knight rescuing a lady on it. And he says to himself, if I lived here, I would have to climb up there and help him. He doesn't look like he's really trying. And the theme of the books, of all 5 of the books, is basically this is a shabby little man in a shabby little business, not making much money, not having a lot of friends, not even having girlfriends for most of the books. But he's a knight inside. He carries inside him this idea of chivalry, even knowing, as he says in The Big Sleep, this is not a game for knights, meaning this corrupt LA that he lives in is not a place that chivalry can succeed. And that was Raymond Chandler's theme. He said in his famous essay, he said, down these mean streets, a man must go who is not himself mean. And that's where we get the phrase mean streets. And that was an idea that totally captivated my 15-year-old mind, that the world was corrupt, that the world was what it was, but I didn't have to be what the world was. And it was only much, much later when I became a Christian that I realized that was good theology as well. And so, I've reached that point in my career where you sort of are looking to sum up a little bit and to go back over the things that you've done and enrich them with the meaning that you've acquired over the years. And so I invented Cameron Winter as a guy who is trying to bring that ideal. The reason I made him a poetry scholar is he's a guy who contains within himself the ideals of Western civilization, but he also has seen for himself firsthand. He has done dirty work for the government, and he has seen firsthand that civilization has another side to it, and doesn't live in its ideals. It lives in the reality of politics and power and all the things that the world lives in. And he's bathed himself in that, and he's done things that he can't forgive himself for. And now he's looking to see if he can become something different, if he can live into the ideal of himself rather than the reality of power struggles and death and money that a country lives on. And one of the reasons I felt this was important in the moment is because in the 2000s, I was watching TV And all of a sudden, the characters, the anti-hero characters that I'd been writing for 10 years were appearing on television. So suddenly you had The Sopranos, and you had Breaking Bad, and you had The Shield, and all these guys that I had been writing in books like True Crime, which Clint Eastwood, made into a film. Like, they were suddenly on television. You couldn't even get them published. When I was doing them, it was hard to get them published. Now they're on TV. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Oh, all this stuff is going to be on TV now." And I thought, that means to me that somehow that idea has played out, that we've got it. You can't be a man in the world. Masculinity is toxic, and therefore the only people who are men are outlaws. In order to be a man, you have to be a mobster, you have to be a dirty cop, you have to break the rules. And I thought, well, how do we get back from there to that image of chivalry that Philip Marlowe held inside him, even as a sleazy guy in a sleazy job? And that's kind of the question I'm exploring. I'm not answering it. I'm not lecturing people about it. I'm just trying to explore it in these stories about Cameron Winter, a man who has been an anti-hero and now is striving to become a hero. And what does that entail? Is it possible? What are the pitfalls? And so all of those things that you noticed, that some of which do come out of my life, are ways back into that. Like somebody compared him to Tony Soprano because he has a therapist. And that's true. But the point of Soprano's therapist is that therapy has no way of dealing with good and evil. Whereas the point of Cameron Winter's therapist is he's using that to seek forgiveness and to see if he can restore himself to something better than he's been. And so I'm using a lot of themes that have been in the culture, that have been through the culture for the last 30, 40 years, and trying to see if there's a new stage that we can move into as we move into a very new world, a very different world, a world in which America seems to be coming apart at the seams, a world in which some of the worst ideas are coming to fruition. Is there a place for a man like Cameron Winter who wants to be a classic hero? And it's been a really interesting journey just as a novelist, and I hope it's interesting for the readers too.
Well, let's pull a little bit on the thread of Charlotte, who is somebody that he meets when he's young. She's 2 years older than him. I think it'd be fair to call this Cameron's first love, and she, even though there's disappointment along the journey in terms of that relationship, for whatever reason, she becomes like his perfect female arc, kind of like, this is the ultimate woman that, through, I don't, talk to us about that character. It's such a strong thread. And again, something that pulls from your own journey a little bit too, which is very fascinating.
Yeah, the idea for me, one of the key things about this is I think that the reason that manhood has become such a problem for young men, especially, is that because womanhood has become a problem, and the basic, ideas and roles of women have changed in ways that have not made women happier and have actually not made anybody happier. We've managed to come up with a philosophy that takes the chief joy of human life, which is the relationship between a man and a woman, and made it a problem for people. And it's making everybody incredibly unhappy and incredibly twisted in their relationship with their bodies and with their sex. And so one of the things I've noticed that has just kind of arisen in these books, I wanted the books to contain love stories. That was very important to me at the beginning. But one of the things that I was not prepared for is how many of the major characters are women, and how many different kinds of women come into the stories and play off Winter's mind. And so the question of this woman who becomes a sort of eidolon, a sort of icon of womanhood in his mind, even though their relationship was really nothing. I mean, it was just a glancing moment in their youth. That becomes the thing on which each woman, the rock on which each woman sort of founders in his life. And especially his therapist, who has become both a mother figure to him and somebody who's kind of attracted to him. And so he's really wrestling with this idea of how to align himself with femininity as he becomes a man, because I don't think a man is an independent thing. I don't think a woman is an independent thing. I think we're complementary, and I think that we grow off each other, and I think the relationship between us defines us in many ways. And I think that when you live in a world which has lied to us about the role of women and the roles of men, it puts the power of truth in the hands of guys like Andrew Tate. Here's a guy, he's a pimp, he's a woman abuser. He admits this, he takes video of it. Young men love him. And why do they love him? Is because he speaks the truth about women and their vulnerabilities and their weakness. Now, I was taught about women's vulnerabilities and weakness as a reason for respect and protectiveness. Those are why you protect and respect women, because they are dealing with another kind of set of values than you are. But once men were told that women were strong, women were equal to them, anything that they said that diminished women from being men was an insult and was sexist, then the truth belongs to Andrew Tate. It belongs to bad guys. It belongs to Tony Soprano. It belongs to the guy in Breaking Bad. And so I wanted to put this guy in a position where he has to come to terms with what's his idea of a woman. If he's going to be a man, and he is, and if he's going to be a hero, and he hopes he will, what does that mean about his relationships with women? And how does he deal with this world that tells him that to be a white knight is a bad thing, is a pejorative, when that's exactly what he's trying to become? And so this image that he has of the feminine in his mind is something that he has to deal with and wrestle with. And ultimately, I believe I'm going to resolve it. I mean, I'm already into the book, writing the book after this one, and I believe it's going to resolve that. And then the books are going to move forward from that point on.
Another aspect of the story that I think people are going to find very relatable. I mean, culturally, people are struggling to have an identity. We're told, our parents are bad, our country of origin is bad, the faith of our parents are bad. But you have, and so I think the real relatable thing is Cameron is trying to fill some of these gaps and just figure things out. So we have Margaret, the counselor, kind of operating sort of as this mother figure. Talk to us a little bit about the recruiter. He's sort of a mentor, but he's sort of a father figure. And this unique bent is he's also a Christ follower. At least it seems like, to some degree. And it's just it's this unique father figure aspect that comes up along the journey.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters, and I think he's a lot of readers that love this guy because he carries within him his own sense of irony, and yet at the same time he's deadly serious. He is a Christ follower. He does believe, but the way he speaks, he sort of is able to both make fun of it and contain it and communicate it at the same time. And he hammers Winter about Winter's unbelief. I mean, he's just constantly on him about the fact that his philosophy doesn't make any sense and that he has no way of judging right from wrong and he doesn't know where he is in the world. But at the same time, he uses him to do the dirty things that people have to do to hold a country together, because those are the things of Caesar. And so he's a very confusing character for Winter. Winter loves him. Winter follows him. He'd walk off a cliff for the guy, but he really doesn't understand what he's telling him. And the message that the recruiter is hammering at him, he's just relentless and absolutely, brutal about it. The message that he's sending him is a strange one. It's not the usual It's not the usual piety, that's for sure. It's a message of how you walk through the world and what you hold and contain inside yourself, and the fact that you have to do terrible things sometimes to do right, which is a message that most Christians don't like to talk about. But Jesus talks about it, and he talks about kings fighting battles and the fact that things are going to go on the way they go on. The world is not going to change because you find a center and a core and you attach that core to something outside yourself. But he's a really troubling character for Winter, but Winter loves him. And I think that is the key thing about their relationship, is there is this love between them. And as you say, this kind of paternal guidance, but it's mysterious and he can't quite get to the core of it. And he's done things at this man's behest that he can't forgive himself for. And so how does he move forward in that relationship? It's a very complicated question that he has to deal with.
Next, I'd love to have you weigh in on Cameron's strange habit of mind. I mean, that's the title for book 2 in the series, but he'll encounter something and it kind of gets stuck in his head and then he can't let it go. That's such a core concept across all 3 books.
Yes. And he's, the thing is, he's not a Sherlock Holmes character who works through reason. He obviously is capable of reason, and after he figures something out, he can explain why he thought the things he thought. But that's not the way he gets there. The way he gets there is he kind of zones out and he lets go of all his opinions. So it's a very kind of Zen-like thing that suddenly he has no opinions, he has no morality, he has no philosophy. He just has the facts, and he describes it as if the gravity has gone out of the room and all the furniture is kind of flying around, and then suddenly it comes plunk down and he sees everything in a different way. And that's important to me because I think that a lot of times we overemphasize reason as the core of humanity. I don't think it is. I think reason is an aspect of humanity, but I think that we have led ourselves astray. Personally, I think it's because we try to define ourselves in relationship to animals. Why are we different from the animals? And the answer is we're not. We're animals. We're also something else. We're just something beyond that. And it's not in our reason. It is in a full capacity of experience. And he has this knack for getting into that full capacity so that he'll be hearing things that the things that draw him into a case, since he's not a professional detective or anything like that, is he gets obsessed when something just doesn't quite fit. That there's it's like a puzzle piece, and everything is in, all the puzzles are in place, but they don't quite make the picture. And he just can't stand it. And so he goes back to it. And really, it's an aspect of the way he lives his life. His whole life is like that. His whole life, he's drifted into doing things. He's reacted to his life. He lost a girl, so he joined the government and he did these terrible things. And he doesn't really know how to put it all together. And so when he sees that reflected in a criminal case, he has to go out and make it right in some way. And that's it's very compelling for him. It's compelling for me because my life has been driven by this idea of making sense. From earliest childhood, I thought, you have to make sense. So even when I would have daydreams, like we all have, little kids have daydreams about being superheroes and all that stuff, I would always start out by asking myself, well, how did I become a superhero? Why do I have a superpower? Why can I drive a car and I'm only 12 or whatever? And I would always have to make up these stories. And it was what made me into a storyteller, was this idea of making sense. And if you look around, if you pay attention, if you listen to what people are saying with great passion and great vigor and great zeal, much of it doesn't make sense. Much of it makes literally no sense, and yet they do not care. I mean, right now we're watching people, for instance, saying, I'm a queer for Palestine, while the people in Palestine are saying, if you come here, we will kill you. And you think, okay, well, that doesn't really make sense, and yet they feel no obligation to that incoherence. And I do. I always have. When I hear myself say something, even if it's something that makes me feel great, even if it's something that I passionately want to be true, and yet it does not jive, I have to fix it. And so that he's got a little bit of that in him. And the way he fixes it is not by reasoning it out, it's by just letting it go and seeing it float around. And that's his strange habit of mind, which he uses to good effect.
And obviously, I've listened to you enough that I wasn't surprised that video games show up in the third book. But there's this immersive VR video game, and it's a core part of the story. I don't want to give so much away, but what really struck me is, on the one hand, I felt like you captured how in this online life, two of the main characters, they're, you might say, they're portraying more of their true selves or who they'd like to be, free of the complications of their real life. And then in the sense that what happens in, whether it's in video games or social media or online life, there can be real problems that develop in the real world based on how we're interacting with others, what's happening online. I'd love to just have you comment on that, because it struck me as such a profound aspect of the story.
Well, one of the things that I've tried to put Winter in is I've tried to put Winter into niche communities that are surrounded by a country in true trouble, in real trouble. So sometimes he'll go into a community that looks like it's absolutely quiescent, it's peaceful, it's old fashioned, but it's surrounded by a country that's unraveling, and a republic that seems to be on the brink of collapse. And because of that, who suffers most in those situations? It's the young people. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they should believe. They're being told lies that don't work. They're being told things that that they can't quite, that don't quite jive with the person they want to be and their hopes and their dreams. And a lot of those hopes and dreams, I've noticed, play out in video games. Video games are a thing that attract especially young men. They're full of heroism. They're full of danger. They're full of shapely women who are appealing and draw you on into adventure. They're full of all the things that myth used to be full of and that have been banned from our society. And so when Winter comes into this world, because Winter kind of lives in the past a little bit, he lives in this kind of ideal Europe of the imagination. When he comes into their world, he represents something to them that is appealing, and he is looking for that in them. He's looking, well, he has a lot of respect for young people. He likes young people, and he feels that they've been betrayed, and so he has a lot of compassion for them. And in this story, there is a lot of interaction with young people, especially young women, who are lost and yet have something magnificent in them. And this is something that he's always encountering, that he's encountered a number of times in women. There's something magnificent in the feminine that he automatically and reflexively respects and honors, but that the woman herself may not know is there or may find is in danger. And so he's just encountering these in different ways. And one of them is in this video game that he gets to watch unfold as these kids essentially live these chivalric dreams in a world that has no room for their chivalry.
I think the place that I'd love to land the interview is talk about kind of that theme of we've all lost, so many of us have lost the ability to realize that there's this inner life of others, but so many of your characters, as I was thinking about it, as the story comes to a close, so many of the characters in the stories have lost the ability to see people as people with this complex, diverse, real inner life, almost in the sense that, we just see other people as meat puppets or people to be used, or and that's it's something that Cameron's wrestling with as well. As I got to the end of the book, I was like, I think he just defined the problem pretty much with all of culture right now, that we fail to, we see people as their cause or their issue or how they're against us, but we fail to see that they have that same inner life like we do. Just a profound theme. Comment on that.
Well, to me, yes, is what I call the great speculation, is the idea that your inner life is as important to you as mine is to me, and both are equally important to God. And I think that that is the basis of everything that we believe, and it's the basis of our morality. And I hear people say all the time, I can't define evil. And I think I can. It's the absence of that. It's the absence of that idea that you are real inside, that something about you is real inside. And I think it's worse than the way you described it, because I think that we not only don't recognize the inner life of other people, we don't actually believe in our own inner lives. So, if you go, you mentioned before, in my youth, my life was saved by a therapist. I mean, it was saved by a conversation with him over several years that set me straight, and the love between us and the relationship that developed between us saved my life and saved and made me sane, which was a kind of a miracle. I actually regard it as a miracle. Now, today, if I went to a therapist with the same set of problems, it's very, very likely that they would try and drug me and give me an antidepressant. And the fascinating thing about antidepressants is, if you talk to the people who peddle them, they will show you examples. Here's a guy that's helped. Here's another guy that's helped. Here's another guy that's helped. But they never mention the fact that depression has skyrocketed. I think it's tripled in the number of reported cases. So many people are on these things that it's absurd and obscene. And so you have to ask a question. Well, when I come up with a cure for polio, polio disappears. If I come up with a treatment for depression, depression triples. There's something that's not making sense there. And I think the answer to that is simply this. If I come to you and I'm depressed, it's not a chemical imbalance. It's actually a reaction to something in my life or in the world or in my past that needs to be addressed through love and through relationship and through communication. There may be, and this is the way pharmaceutical companies work, there may be the rare individual who is actually born with a chemical imbalance so that he's depressed for no reason, who can benefit from some of these drugs. But that's a rare, rare thing. And once you've dealt with those, you still want to keep selling those pills and making that coin. And I think we basically are saying to people, you're just a bag of chemicals. Let me fix these chemicals. Let me adjust the dose a little bit and you'll be happy. So, and people talk like this. I mean, it's amazing. They'll say I'm on an endorphin high. I'm full of adrenaline. I'm suffering from some kind of deficit. And you think, like, you're not, you're happy, you're sad. This is the way the body communicates those spiritual realities to itself. Of course, the body is a physical thing. It operates through physical means, but it's communicating something to you about who you really are. And the loss of that is, as you say, the great tragedy we're facing. The loss of the idea that I think women are suffering from it most, but women are being told, oh yeah, no, I can put on a string of pearls and talk in a high voice. Now I'm a woman too. It's all body outline. It's not about the fact that a woman is an actual internal experience that can't be imitated by a man. It just can't be done. And so that to me is, the poison that has gone through our souls. It was noticed 500 years ago by great thinkers who said, this is going to have this following problems are going to develop from this. Here they are. And I think that it is one of the things that you just, I'm not preaching. I'm not lecturing. I'm not writing parables. I'm just writing stories about the world as it is. And to me, this is one of the central facts of the world as it is right now.
Yeah, I think there are so many things throughout culture, whether it's entertainment or alcohol, whatever, pick your poison, so to speak. There are so many ways that folks can try to avoid their inner life, their demons, their problems. And the reality is, no matter what we attempt to fill all that with, you're going to get to dark places where you're still going to know there's something wanting, that all that entertainment, all that whatever it might be, it's never going to fill that gap. And we're designed to have a deep inner life. We're designed to want to be thoughtful. We're designed to connect with the Creator God. And just a great commentary on a very huge problem throughout culture right now. In terms of, whether we're talking the reader's journey with this book or the series as it is thus far, is there a way you hope these stories inspire the reader? Because I feel like you can't get to the end of any of the three books that exist already in the series and not feel compelled to want to be a better man or woman, or move like it's very, I feel like Cameron's story is very inspiring as he changes and wrestles, because his story is our story. So many aspects of what he's struggling with, I feel like we can relate to what's going on somewhere, somehow in our own life.
That, first of all, it's great to hear you react to it that way. I think, if I have an ambition as a writer, it is that you can reach out at 3 o'clock in the morning and pick up my book and feel you're not alone. I mean, that to me is what art has always been about. That there are people, some of them dead, some of them living, who are still there in these in works of art, which are works of art. We're talking about the inner man. That's what a work of art is. It's a communication of one inner person to another inner person to other inner people. Because you can't communicate that in any other way except by telling stories and writing music and painting pictures. That's how we communicate. We communicate through metaphor and symbol. And so my genuine ambition is that if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you are alone and you are in that dark night of the soul, you can pick up one of these novels and start to read them and say, oh no, I'm not alone. Cameron Winter is out there, and Cameron Winter is the creation of another person just like me, seeing the same things that I'm seeing. And I think that to me, if you accomplish that as a writer, you have done your job. You have actually done what you've set out to do. I'm in a position now where, because of my outspoken politics and because of my outspoken religion, I'm never going to win any more awards. I'm never going to get the big reviews. I'm not looking for that. I gave that up a long time ago. But if I can communicate with readers and have them write to me as they do and say, oh my gosh, this actually did give me a moment of peace or inspiration, or the sense that I'm not alone. To me, I'm a winner. That's what I'm here for. That's my job.
And Andrew, for the listeners and viewers who'd like to connect with you, find out more about this series, all your other books, where are the places we can find you on the web?
Well, you can go to andrewklavan.com. It's Klavan, andrewklavan.com. And you can see all the books and all the stuff I do. And I'm on Twitter at Andrew Klavan as well.
And we'll make it
X,
easy.
I should say.
Yes, X, no longer Twitter. And it's no longer retweet, it's repost. Who knew? All the changes that nobody told us about. We'll make it easy like we do with every episode. We'll have links in the description and the show notes to places where you can pick up Andrew's new book, as well as places where you can connect with him on his website and social media. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Andrew Klavan. Once again, our book today was The House of Love and Death, book number 3 in the Cameron Winter mystery series. And Andrew, I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's always a joy and a pleasure to have you back in the show.
Love talking to you, Shaun. Thanks a lot.